Good afternoon, everybody. We'll give it another minute as people file into the webinar. So stand by. Okay, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today at the NASEO State Industrial Working Group webinar. We are very fortunate today to have a focus on Pennsylvania's great programs. We will be joined by Michelle Ferguson, Energy Program Specialist from Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, the Energy Program Office, which is the state energy office. She will be joined by her colleague Louis Crack, also the DEP, who is directing the RISE PA program, which you will hear about, and by Alana Colvin, who is Associate Director of PennTAP, the Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Program. Oh, by the way, we are recording this, and we will have the slides and recording available afterwards. Um, so next slide, Sam. So I will give a little bit on the logistics and a little bit of an overview for the working group. There are some new faces. Typically, the working group has state-only forums, but this is an open webinar. We welcome all of you to this. With regard to the logistics, please mute when not speaking. This is a Zoom meeting rather than webinar, so we all have more or less equal rank, so we do not have a special mechanism for just the speakers. Anyway, please use the chat box to offer questions. I think there's not actually Q&A box. And it's not a very large group, so you can raise your hand also during the Q&A. The slides and recordings will be posted. Next, please. So a little bit about the Industrial Working Group. We have the support of Department of Energy's Industrial Efficiency and Decarbonization Office. They have provided generous support for us to help the state energy offices and other agencies and programs to identify, develop, and enhance resources to advance clean manufacturing, clean industry. Much of what we've been trying to do in the working group is to enhance cooperation and coordination across technical and business assistance programs, and you'll hear a bit of Pennsylvania's experience today. And to do this in order to support your state's economic development and productivity goals, as well as environmental and energy reliability and resilience objectives. We mean to support both existing industry as well as to advance new technologies and industries. Next, please. We have a bunch of states participating through their state energy offices, but also through various technical assistance programs and economic development agencies or programs. Next. And we offer a variety of resources. We provide email and web updates to technical and business assistance programs that are available, funding and financial provisions. We point people to various reports, studies, and tools, and to various events, including some of our own. Listed there, and please visit our web pages as well, are some of our recent items. We put out back in December, a report on manufacturing and energy about advancing productivity and prosperity and the environment, really an overview of technical assistance programs and ways to collaborate. I'll say a bit more about that. There have been a couple of recent Department of Energy announcements, including transformative pathways for U.S. industry. A couple of several items from other organizations. The Industrial Heat Pump Alliance had a recent webinar and report on industrial heat pump economics. I've recently learned about a renewal thermal battery alliance. I need to learn more about that, and I will pass that along to you all when I learn about it. And also a reminder for those who have been participating in the working group that we did have a forum focused on industrial heat, and we had one of the major vendors of thermal batteries. Renewable Thermal Collaborative recently published a utility engagement playbook for industrial customers, and they also had a webinar. I think if you go to the link, which we will share later and is on our webpage, you may also get to the recording for that webinar. And then there were a number of announcements from the Department of Energy on funding availability, although with the new administration, some of that may be a little bit tentative. Next, please. So I did want to mention the report that we came out with back in December. We start off with the importance of manufacturing, both to the nation and to states, and provide some information about where you and your state can find some manufacturing data sources. We have a fair amount of discussion of state energy office roles and interests in this area. We do provide summaries of and links to a variety of technical assistance programs and resources. It's not exhaustive, but it does cover some of the major programs that are available to support industry in your states. And we are very happy that a fair number of states within our working group have provided us with great examples of how they are working to advance clean energy, clean technologies, and clean manufacturing, including California's advancing energy technology development and demonstration in the industrial and commercial space. Connecticut has a first in the nation and perhaps only in the nation chief manufacturing officer who works very hard to promote collaboration and coordination across different programs and resources. Maine created an industrial innovation task force. You will hear more about Pennsylvania in a few minutes. Texas also has a fairly robust industrial energy efficiency network and program across a variety of institutions. And in Utah, there's very strong collaboration between the Industrial Assessment Center and the State Energy Office for providing support to industry there. Next slide. And just a little summary of a few of our recent events. Our last working group forum was on industrial heat, electrification, and storage. We had earlier on in the year, we had a focus on state and local pollution prevention programs and small business environmental assistance. We've had a number of NASEO events, including including a regional meeting in which we visited an industrial facility from Trane Technologies. Oh, and forgot to mention the industrial demand flexibility forum and webinar that we held last year as well. And we are looking for some candidates for future topics and invite you to take a look at those and make your suggestions as well. So with enough of my babbling, I will hand it to Michelle Ferguson of Pennsylvania DEP to kick us off. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rodney. Thank you for the introduction and for this opportunity to highlight some of the programs in Pennsylvania surrounding industrial energy efficiency. My name is Michelle Ferguson. I'm an energy program specialist with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Our Energy Programs Office serves as the State Energy Office for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background on our EPO is our Energy Programs Office, our purpose and mission, and we support energy policies and programs to prevent pollution, protect the environment, improve public health, and ensure access to affordable energy options for all Pennsylvanians. So we get involved in a lot of different energy topics, like all the other state energy offices, things from conservation and efficiency to energy security. We do a lot of education and outreach and climate initiatives in the state. I personally work mostly on energy efficiency topics, including this particular industrial sector. So next slide, please. I just wanted to do a quick slide. Sorry that it's a little bit busy, but just a little bit of background on Pennsylvania's energy history. So we really do have a very rich history when it comes to energy. Pennsylvania is home to the first commercially successful oil well, the Drake well. We have the Marcellus Shale Formation in Pennsylvania, which is very rich in natural gas, and that's beneath like 60% of the state's land mass. So given the abundance of the Marcellus Shale Formation, Pennsylvania is the nation's second largest natural gas producer. We're behind Texas. And we're also the third largest coal producing state after Wyoming and West Virginia. In 2022, we ranked behind Illinois as far as electricity generation from nuclear power. And we end up exporting about a third of our electricity generation to surrounding states. So it's just kind of interesting to see, our rich history, and there's a lot. So given that context, if you want to go to the next slide, please. When it comes to climate change and climate goals, an executive order was signed by then Governor Tom Wolf back in 2019. And this particular executive order established goals for greenhouse gas emission reductions in the state. So we're getting close to that first goal that the executive order had set for Pennsylvania, and that was reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 26% by 2025. I think we're going to come close. I don't have like current or exact numbers on that, but that was one of the goals of the executive order. And then another second goal was to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. So this executive order did a lot of things. One of the things was setting performance goals for the state so that we would lead by example. And part of that was setting up a Green Government Council within the state, and that is a lot of different state agencies are involved, including DEP, where I work, just trying to reach those goals through energy efficiency in our buildings, adding electric vehicles to our fleet, and things like that. Next slide. So the industrial energy use in Pennsylvania is big. It's actually the largest energy consumer by sector in the Commonwealth. So we have over 16,000 manufacturing facilities in Pennsylvania. And those industrial facilities account for a little bit over 37% of our energy use in the state. So the industrial sector is definitely a key sector when it comes to looking at ways to reduce energy use and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. So the industrial sector is very important to our economy, contributes $116 billion to the state's economy. There are over 500,000 people that are employed in the manufacturing sector, and manufacturing accounts for more than 10% of all jobs in the Commonwealth. And I borrowed those numbers from our sister agency, the Department of Community and Economic Development. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the types of industry that we have in Pennsylvania, this is a listing of some of the major industrial subsectors that we have. So pretty big on cement and lime production, chemical manufacturing, glass manufacturing, the iron and steel industry, the oil and gas industry, petroleum refining, pulp and paper, and coal mining is still pretty big in Pennsylvania. So these are some of the larger. We also have a lot of food processing, pharmaceutical, but these are some of the bigger industrial subsectors in Pennsylvania. Next slide. So we have some different financial incentives for industry in Pennsylvania. Certainly always referring the industrial sector to federal programs, but as far as state programs, there's two that I wanted to highlight actually. First, we have the utility programs. So back in 2008, an act was passed called Act 129. It's administered by the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. And what Act 129 did was it required the 7 largest electric distribution companies in the state to develop energy efficiency and conservation plans. So these utilities actually offer financial incentives to their customers to reduce the amount of electricity that they're using. So again, it's the 7 largest EDCs in Pennsylvania. So it does not include like the rural electric cooperatives or the smaller electric distribution companies, but those 7 large ones really cover geographically the majority of Pennsylvania. And some examples of projects that they can help fund include things like lighting, upgrades, HVAC equipment, compressed air, variable frequency drives. They do custom rebates, they do prescriptive rebates. This is usually the first place that I will refer people to their utility. And it's also some of the natural gas utilities as well, not just electric. So that's a key financial incentive program in Pennsylvania to help fund energy efficiency upgrades at industry. But another program I wanted to mention, and I apologize, I did not have any approved slides for this program to share with you today, but it's the Small Business Advantage Grant. And that program has been around since 2004. It's a first come, first served grant. It's administered through DEP, but it's a different office. So I work for our energy programs office. The Small Business Advantage Grant is our Small Business Ombudsman office. And they are able to offer grants to small businesses with less than 100 employees. They do grants that pay for 50 to 80% of an energy efficiency or pollution prevention project. And the grants range in size from $7,500 to $12,000. We get about $1 million annually for this particular program. And like I said, it's been around for 20 years now. It's open right now. It's first come, first served, and it's a good program. We have a lot of small businesses take advantage of that. So, and then I think this is a good segue to my colleague, Louis Crack. And Louis is going to talk about a new funding program, new up and coming RISE PA.
Thanks so much, Michelle. So hi, everyone. My name is Louis Crack, and I am the Director of Reducing Industrial Sector Emissions in Pennsylvania. Next slide. So RISE PA is a $396 million statewide industrial decarbonization grant program that aims to substantially reduce both greenhouse gas and co-pollutant emissions from Pennsylvania's industrial sector by funding small, medium, and large-scale decarbonization projects at industrial facilities across the Commonwealth. Pennsylvania's industrial sector is the highest emitting sector statewide and accounts for just over 30% of Pennsylvania's total greenhouse gas emissions, which is why we wanted to target this sector. And RISE PA is funded through the Environmental Protection Agency's climate pollution reduction grants. So this is truly a transformational amount of funding to not only address climate change, but also help industrial companies increase their competitiveness, reduce their operating costs, and create high quality jobs. Next slide. I want to take a minute to drill down deeper into how we define industrial sector emissions. So every year, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection publishes a greenhouse gas inventory that breaks down the Commonwealth's total greenhouse gas emissions by sector. So in order to be eligible to receive an award, projects must reduce emissions from Pennsylvania's industrial to sector as defined by DEP's greenhouse gas inventory. So this includes emissions from 4 subgroups: industrial fossil fuel combustion, industrial process emissions, and fugitive emissions from natural gas and oil systems, and from coal mining and abandoned coal mines. I'll also note that for RISE PA, we are including emissions from industrial electricity usage, even though those emissions are accounted for in the electricity sector of the inventory. So what we're really talking about here are reducing scope 1 and 2 emissions from industrial facilities. And because there is such a diverse source of industrial emissions in Pennsylvania, there's similarly a broad range of eligible applicants. So the applicants who are eligible to submit project proposals include manufacturers, industrial facilities, coal mine owners or operators, natural gas and oil systems owners and operators, as well as other entities conducting projects at eligible industrial facilities, which could include things like energy as a service companies, sustainability as a service companies, or landlords of eligible industrial facilities. Next slide. So RISE PA will offer grants for a wide range of projects because there is no one-size-fits-all solution for decarbonizing industry. You really need a Swiss Army knife approach. So as a result, we intentionally left the definition of an eligible project very broad, and projects must ultimately deploy one or more of the following decarbonization solutions. So electrification, energy efficiency, industrial process emissions reductions, fugitive emissions reductions, on-site renewable energy generation, and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Also, other technology not explicitly listed that reduces GHG emissions from the industrial sector may also be eligible as determined by RISE PA. One of the really exciting things about this program is we don't know yet what all the different types of projects might be, and wanted to leave it sort of open-ended to encourage innovative and potentially first-of-a-kind projects. Next slide. RISE PA will issue $360 million of funding across 3 award tracks: small, medium, and large. The small scale award track will be exclusively for small and medium-sized manufacturers, and this track will be administered by PennTAP. To be eligible to receive a small scale award, companies will either need to get an energy audit from PennTAP or an equivalent source. We have another project partner in Pennsylvania called Catalyst Connection that will be offering free greenhouse gas assessments and technical assistance to small and medium-sized manufacturers to help build out the pipeline of small-scale projects. And a minimum greenhouse gas reduction threshold is not required for small-scale projects, but will be factored into the evaluation process. Then for the medium and large scale award tracks, these will be administered by the Department of Environmental Protection, and projects must achieve a minimum 20% reduction in the total Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions facility-wide where the project will be implemented. So here we're really looking to fund big, bold, and transformative ideas. Next slide. Now I want to take a minute to break down how the awards are structured. So there's $40 million available for the small scale award track, and PennTAP will be issuing awards ranging from $25,000 up to $500,000, with the applicant providing a 50% cost share. So this means that if the total project cost falls between $50,000 and $1 million, the project will be in the small scale award track. Then there will be $100 million allocated to the medium scale award track, with DEP issuing awards ranging from $300,000 up to $20 million, with the applicant providing a 70% cost share. So that means if your total project cost is greater than $1 million, all the way up to about $66 million, your project will be in the medium scale award track. Then lastly, there's $220 million allocated for large-scale projects, again, with the applicant providing a 70% cost match. So here, award sizes will range from $20 million up to $110 million, and the corresponding total project cost for large-scale projects would be for projects that are greater than $66 million, all the way up to $366 million. Next slide. So projects submitted across all award tracks may also be eligible to receive bonus award allocations that would be added to the base grant award and would increase the grant award and decrease the cost share requirement for projects that meet additional criteria. So first is the community benefits bonus, which is worth 10% of the total project cost and will be awarded to projects located in and benefiting impacted communities. To obtain this bonus, applicants must submit a community benefits plan that will be competitively scored. So this bonus is available to applicants across all three award tracks. All three award tracks are also eligible for the Fair Labor Bonus, which will be awarded to projects that meet additional labor requirements beyond the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements that all projects must satisfy. And this bonus will also be worth up to 10% of the total project cost. And then lastly, only applicants applying for medium and large scale projects can qualify for the greenhouse gas emissions reduction bonus. And this is for projects that reduce over the 20% total facility-wide greenhouse gas emissions threshold. And this bonus will be calculated based on the greenhouse gas emissions reductions achieved by the project, up to a maximum of 10% of the total project cost. Next slide. So I want to go into some more details around the requirements for the bonus awards, because this is a unique feature of the RISE PA program. So to receive the community benefits bonus, applicants must submit community benefit plans that cover a wide variety of efforts that should be determined by the community's priorities. And so the community benefits plan must set forth the applicant's approach to ensuring that investments from RISE PA flow to impacted communities. The community benefits plan must define a community beneficiary, which could be a nonprofit, municipal government, community-based organization, or residents of the community. And the community beneficiaries must inform the development of the plan through meaningful engagement opportunities that utilize both deliberative and participatory methods. Applicants should also provide community partnership documentation from representative organizations that reflects their approach to community benefits, and will also be required to provide letters of support from intended community beneficiaries. For large-scale award track projects only, they must also include one legally binding community benefit agreement that is signed by either a nonprofit entity or a community-based organization or municipality that can document community support for the project. Another component of the community benefits plan is applicants have to complete a project that either leads to improved environmental outcomes or addresses economic security measures in the impacted community. So improved environmental outcomes projects could include projects that address clean air by deploying air monitoring equipment or distributing air purifiers. It could be doing clean water testing or building green space, investing in tree planting, or funding a climate action plan. Those are just examples. Creativity is encouraged. Projects that address economic security measures could include providing seed funding for an affordable housing development, developing renewable energy for housing, or investing in electric vehicle infrastructure. Next slide. The Fair Labor Bonus is comprised of three required elements: the Good Neighbor Agreement, collective bargaining commitments, and participation in another program we have in Pennsylvania called the Commonwealth Workforce Transformation Program. So for the Good Neighbor Agreement, applicants must detail their plans to ensure access to jobs and business opportunities for local residents. They need to state how they're going to invest in training for local workers. They have to commit to paying wages and benefits above prevailing rates for construction workers doing the actual project implementation work, as well as commitments to pay above average wages and benefits for hourly non-construction workers. Then there's a series of collective bargaining commitments that the applicant must adhere to, the most substantial of which is to negotiate a project labor agreement for the project construction activity. And then lastly, the Commonwealth Workforce Transformation Program will provide funding for on-the-job training for new employees brought onto the job site to do the project work. And here, this will reimburse up to $30,000 for training costs for each new employee and up to $10,000 in supportive services for each new employee. Next slide. Then lastly, the greenhouse gas emissions reduction bonus is an incremental bonus, again, only available for medium and large projects that exceed the 20% emissions reduction threshold. So this bonus is worth up to 10% of the total project cost and will be calculated based on how far above that 20% threshold the project will achieve. And it's important to note that grantees will only receive this bonus upon project completion, and they will also have to undergo measuring, monitoring, and verification protocol to confirm and verify that the emissions reductions have been achieved before they'll receive the funding associated with this bonus. Next slide. So now I want to talk about the timeline for the rollout of this program. So the RISE PA program will open and begin accepting applications for DEP's portion of the program for medium and large scale projects in early 2025. We're anticipating that PennTAP will begin accepting applications for small scale projects in Q1 of this year. And the application window for all 3 award tracks will remain open with multiple rounds annually until all funds have been obligated. For small projects, they will be evaluated on a trimester schedule with a funding deadline occurring every 4 months. And medium and large scale projects will be evaluated biannually with a funding deadline occurring every 6 months. So we only have 5 years to do this program, or until late 2029. So that's 5 years to not only spend all the money, but complete all the project work. So time really is of the essence, especially when you consider that for some of the largest projects, they will take years to fully implement. So, we're working as hard as we can to stand up this program as quickly as possible to enable those projects enough time to be completed. Next slide. So I just want to thank you so much for giving me this platform to share more about RISE PA, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to help bring this first of a kind program to fruition. So if you have any questions or comments about the program that we are unable to address during the Q&A, you can submit them to the email address that you see at the bottom of the screen. I can assure you that I read and personally respond to every email submitted. And I'll just end by saying that RISE PA is a very poetic opportunity for Pennsylvania. As one of the birthplaces of the Industrial Revolution, we have now been given the opportunity to help lead the nation in the industrial decarbonization movement. And with that, I'm very pleased to turn it over to my colleague and RISE PA partner in crime, Alana Colvin.
Thank you so much, Louis. All right, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you, Rod, for hosting us today. Thank you, NASEO. My name is Alana Colvin. I am the Associate Director of the Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Program, or PennTAP. Today, NASEO has asked that I provide an overview of PennTAP for everybody here, and I will also be going into more detail regarding RISE PA's small-scale award track program that PennTAP will be administering alongside DEP. Next slide, please. So our mission. Who is PennTAP? PennTAP is a statewide technical assistance organization charged with supporting Pennsylvania businesses and anchor institutions, including manufacturers, municipalities, educational institutes, entrepreneurs, and economic development agencies. We began 60 years ago as one of the first technical assistance programs in the country. Next slide, please. We have a network of technical advisors strategically located throughout Pennsylvania. Our team includes certified energy managers, certified Six Sigma Green Belts, a professional engineer, certified water efficiency professional, and a lead green associate. Next slide, please. We have worked with various partners over the years to help us further our mission and support our small businesses and industry throughout Pennsylvania. It is through these partnerships that we oftentimes are able to provide our services at no cost. Next slide, please. We are nearly complete with compiling our 2024 results. Apart from our economic benefits listed here representing our work from 2023, based on what we have reviewed so far, I am comfortable sharing that in 2024, we helped 115 clients achieve several $1 million in economic benefits. 44 jobs were either created or saved as a result of our work. And in addition, we engaged nearly 200 students and educated nearly 1,000 individuals. Next slide. So what does it look like to work with PennTAP? We have two key areas of focus. We have our energy and environment support and our innovation support. For both, we work to connect our clients with regional and statewide economic development partners, university programs and students, as well as community partners. Next slide. As an example of what this looks like and what PennTAP can do with a client, in 2021, we worked with Custom Container Solutions. They produce roll-off, hook lift, front and rear load steel containers. They have 2 locations in Pennsylvania. We had a focus of working with the Milton facility. And since working with CCS, they have grown from about 75 employees to just over 100 full-time employees. Since 2021, PennTAP has provided our pollution prevention and energy efficiency assessment, the P2E2 assessment for the facility. We have also participated in a VSM value stream mapping project with our MEP, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Network, here in Pennsylvania. We have connected the company to Penn State's Senior Engineering Capstone Program, also known as Learning Factory. And then we have also connected them with Penn State researchers for a project on smart manufacturing. This was funded by the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute, or CESME. PennTAP focuses on the pollution prevention and energy efficiency saving metrics of a project. And across the projects that CCS was presented, they saw a 31% reduction in electricity, a 9% reduction in propane, and a 35% increase in production, resulting in higher quality products. The company has continued to implement projects, and at this time has recognized $17.5 thousand in savings and received $92,000 in grants across multiple different programs. Note that the production savings for lower overtime, more product, higher quality of product, those have not been captured by our program, but would be captured by the MEP network, and they would be accounting for those savings. Next slide, please. So to follow up on what Louis has already shared, PennTAP is providing assessments for the potential RISE PA applicants and is administering the RISE PA Small Scale Award Track program. So specifically, what I'm going to look at is focusing on the approach and the features of that SAT program. Next slide, please. First, focusing on the Small Scale Award Track program. I want to reiterate the definition of the small to mid-sized manufacturer for the Small Scale Award Track. A manufacturer is defined as an entity that engages in the mechanical, physical, or chemical transformation of materials, substances, or components. We chose to be more open than using the NICS codes, as our team has experience working with smaller companies that register under alternative codes, alternative to manufacturing. However, they have manufacturing activities at site. So we wanted to make sure we created an impact for any of the heavy industrial processes within Pennsylvania, that do not inadvertently create exclusive boundaries. So we want to make sure anybody who has manufacturing processes taking place at their site, that they have the opportunity to apply, and we can recognize that they have made changes, whether that's for lowering the greenhouse gas emissions, as this program is seeking, but also creating a better competitive Pennsylvania footprint for our small to mid-sized manufacturers. Next slide, please. I want to highlight the differences of the SAT program from the MET and LAT. Louis went through that verbally, but kind of to paint it all on the same slide here. PennTAP is focusing on projects that are under $1 million. So the total project cost is under $1 million, has to be at least $50,000. We are using trimesters to avoid a quarter overlap. Everybody uses quarters, especially in industry. We use quarters and report out our metrics, and we really didn't want to impede any of the manufacturers competing with applying for this program and getting internal metrics set, let alone for ourselves competing with what we have to put out, and recognizing that clients will want our support in these applications. So we went with a trimester approach that will always end on the year, but will give us some space for everybody to ask more questions or get that application in. There isn't a minimum greenhouse gas reduction requirement for the SAT program, and this allows flexibility in the potential projects. We can provide up to a 50% base grant for an eligible project, and with the bonus materials, you can actually create that up to 70% covering the total project cost. Next slide, please. So noting that a $50,000 project will have significantly different greenhouse gas emissions reductions when compared to $1 million project, PennTAP has created 3 tiers to compare the applicant projects. I went through our data across 5 years and looked at hundreds of recommendations across different technologies and the potential for their energy and greenhouse gas reductions, and recognize that roughly the projects that can be afforded within these tiers have similar greenhouse gas reduction outputs. Therefore, a small manufacturer who's looking to install a lighting project at their facility will not compete with a manufacturer who's looking to install a solar array. We really wanted to make sure there was balance in this program, and as we are competitively reviewing these applications in the SAT, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a stronghold application. Next slide, please. This is our quick reference for our application. So PennTAP will be working with an internal team to create an electronic portal, as Louis mentioned, that is coming up in Q1. The highlight of this application, we want the project and budget information, a technical assessment report completed by a qualified assessor as defined within our guidance. The qualified assessor will be reviewing the site's energy consumption, greenhouse gas emission output for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, and then we'll also assess the project and iterate its respective savings across cost, energy, greenhouse gas, the simple payback, and that estimated lifespan. Each location must also submit a monitoring, measurement, and verification plan, an MMV plan. This way, when it's time for that grantee to provide information on the performance of their project, they will have a process set up prior to collecting that information, and we believe that applicants will be set on a success path for providing us that information. When we say, hey, how'd your project do? We want to report on this a year after they've implemented. We believe that this will really support receiving that information back. As part of the RISE program, PennTAP has also been funded to provide site assessments to potential RISE PA applicants, along with Catalyst Connection, who is part of the MEP network here in Pennsylvania. PennTAP estimates that we'll see anywhere between 800 to 1,000 applicants over the tenure of the SAT program, and we have agreed to perform around 260 assessments to support these numbers. The remaining assessments will be provided from organizations like Catalyst, the Industrial Training and Assessment Centers, the ITACs, and other qualified assessors, such as the Cadmus Group, which Michelle will speak more about here in a moment. Under the SAT program, PennTAP has included that if a company has paid for an assessment by an outside firm, then up to $10,000 can be used as cost share. This was our attempt to make the RISE PA SAT program accessible for any eligible PA manufacturer and was not limited by that potential cost of an assessment. Paid invoices must be post-dated October 1, 2024 to qualify for this feature. However, just to note, PennTAP is allowing a look back to 2022 if an applicant has already had a report complete. There may be items that need to be updated for relevancy, such as the utility bill analysis. However, given that the report meets the theme of our grant, it would be an appropriate document to support their project. Next slide, please. The SAT program does not require a technical assessment report as dictated by any one standard. So to say out loud, rather than our concern is that an industrial professional is supporting the small manufacturer and is using best practices across all of these different programs and standards to provide a custom and articulate report for their potential project. In order to accommodate the different programmatic styles across different qualified assessors, PennTAP considered what was important in the application and what data was needed for the CPRG program holistically, the flow-up information. Programs such as PennTAP, Catalyst Connection, the ITACs, we do not typically provide a ASHRAE Level 2 standard audit. However, we look at the best practices across multiple standards and government tools and use that to facilitate our programs. However, there are programs and partners out there that will commit to a Level 2 audit, and those audits will meet our requirements. Next slide, please. In order to have consistency in the small award track for our greenhouse gas data collection, we will have the SAT applicants focus on using the EPA's simplified greenhouse gas calculator. This tool will be submitted with the applications. The EPA updates this tool annually with eGrid information. And so knowing that the CPRG, that RISE PA, was funded under EPA, this calculator will ensure that we are collecting the correct information across our small award track applicants. Next slide. And yeah, for anybody looking, anybody who has contacts for PA manufacturers, those manufacturers should review the guidelines on the websites. There is guidelines on the PADEP website. The guidelines are also listed on PennTAP's website. Check the website for updates and to get added to PennTAP's mailing list so that you can receive our newsletter and any programmatic updates, such as, hey, we launched the portal. So please check that out. I'll post the link here in the chat after this. And yeah, look forward to doing work. Now with that, I'd like to hand it back to Michelle for finishing and rounding us out.
Okay, thank you, Alana. I'll try to move fairly quickly so that we do have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So Alana was talking about the RISE PA program and qualified assessments under that program, and that leads into the program that I'm going to talk about, which is completely separate but complementary. So back in 2023, DEP decided to hire a contractor to give us some recommendations for best practices on how we could provide technical assistance to the industrial sector. Looked at that particular contractor, looked at case studies from 5 different states. And we took a look at those case studies and came up with what we wanted to do for an industrial energy assessment program. And next slide. We did an RFP back in April of 2024 to hire a contractor to administer an industrial energy assessment program. We are using state energy program bill funds for the program. We received 5 proposals and selected the Cadmus Group, issued a contract for just over $2 million to them back in September of 2024 to manage the industrial energy assessment program for us. Next slide. This program will consist of ASHRAE Level 2 energy audits. So that's maybe a distinction from some other programs, but we will be providing a simple online application process for interested facilities, and they will be receiving recommendation reports, the walkthrough audit, action plans. A total of 200 facilities will be audited through this program by April of 2028. That's the goal. Next slide. So again, the contractor will be doing the walkthrough audits. They'll be providing recommendations for funding sources to help with project implementation. They'll also be doing follow-up surveys a year after the audit to see what was implemented. They'll be creating success stories for us. The ultimate goal was to help these facilities save energy while at the same time reducing greenhouse gas emissions and energy use. Next slide. So eligible facilities, it's similar to RISE on some things, similar to the industrial assessment centers, looking at facilities with less than 500 employees, the SIC codes. The one thing, these facilities cannot have open violations with DEP. So we do run we'll be running compliance checks. There are over 7,000 manufacturers that meet all of these eligibility criteria. We had our contractor do a study report to see how many manufacturers do meet the criteria. So out of those 16,000 manufacturers in PA, over 7,000 would be eligible for this program. Next slide, please. So again, our team is the Cadmus Group, and then their subcontractors are listed here. Energy Infrastructure Partners, EMC Insights, Incline, Penn State College of Engineering, and the Lehigh University IAC. Next slide. And we do have a focus on EJ areas. So if located in an EJ area, they will get a highly reduced audit. So there is a small cost share on the audits. They are not free, but a highly discounted, reduced cost audit. Next slide. So we're in the process of finalizing our application portal and the website and starting to market the program. It should be launching within the next 2 weeks, actually, early 2025 here, but hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we will be launching everything and starting to accept applications from facilities who are interested. Next slide. And that's just my contact information if you have questions. I did breeze through those quickly so that we can take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Alana. Thank you, Louis. This is fantastic to see your programs. There is a question in the chat, and there are a couple of others. But before we get to that, I think the generic question for your sister states is, what advice do you have to give to states to better cooperate and collaborate across programs and agencies? I heard here we have DEP, we have PennTAP, you mentioned the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, you mentioned the Industrial Training and Assessment Centers, and it seems like you're really well attuned to each other. And I know the case that Alana presented involved different programs and different agencies in different parts of Penn State. How do you, we know in some states it's hard to get people to talk to each other and to work together. So what's your advice? Any of you, all of you?
I can speak just real briefly. We did form an industrial stakeholder group back in 2018, and that group's continuing to grow, but it includes like other state agencies and PennTAP and the utilities and a number of stakeholders. So we try to get those folks together just to learn more about each other's programs. I think just information sharing is huge because people don't always know what programs exist. So that's one way we've tried to better collaborate, is to establish that stakeholder group. But looks like Alana had something to say.
It's of a similar vein. At PennTAP, one of the early slides I had shown was that we are regional across Pennsylvania. And what that helps us do is that we can have a tech advisor in these meetings, in the different community meetings that take place. So it can be the larger, hey, this is a couple government agencies, but it can also be the smaller, here's the communities programs. And that has allowed us to be more in tune with what is the priorities for each region and or the priorities even for a county. So we can even narrow it down further. And then just being open to conversation. Even PennTAP's position, even if the work is not being done by PennTAP, if we can refer you to a connected partner, that is something that we are eager to do. So that could be an internal play with Penn State, or that can be external with our government agencies, economic development partners, and community partners.
And to add from the RISE PA perspective, when we were in the design phase, coming up with the program design for RISE PA, DEP issued a request for information with a proposed project design, and then listed a series of questions and asked for feedback on the proposed design, because we didn't want to create a program that industry didn't want to use, because then it would be all this effort for nothing. And we got 39 responses submitted to that RFI request, and one was from PennTAP and one was from Catalyst Connection. And so that's how that partnership was formed. I read the response from PennTAP and from Catalyst and thought to myself, wow, I wasn't even considering small to medium-sized manufacturers in the design of this program. And because of the compelling information that they provided in their responses, I reached out to PennTAP, I reached out to Catalyst, and they became partners on the grant application. We wrote them in as partners in our grant application to EPA that ultimately got funded. So that's a recommendation I would have for other states considering designing new programs, is take the time to do a request for information, because it can lead to some really fruitful partnerships that make it a better program overall. And I can say that the PennTAP and Catalyst, they greatly strengthened our application, and I believe are a big reason of why, one, we got funded in the first place, and two, why we received such a large chunk of funding from EPA.
That's great to hear. We're a little over the hour, but I do want to entertain another question or two if we can. There was a question in the chat regarding stacking of funding, and I know Michelle answered it in part with respect to utility incentives, but I think there may be a greater question of using federal monies potentially to match federal monies, which may not be quite proper. So, for example, if you make it have a project under RISE PA, could that be stacked with DOE funding under the Industrial Training and Assessment Center implementation grants, as a for instance, or other sorts of funding, the USDA funding or elsewhere?
So it ultimately depends on the requirements of the other source of funding. Like, I know for the ITAC implementation grants, they don't allow other sources of federal funding to be used towards meeting their match requirement. And because RISE PA is funded through EPA, it we are allowed to stack other sources of local, state, and federal grants that have been already secured as toward meeting cost match, but it would determine, you know, it would depend on what are the restrictions on the other side of the federal grant that you would be using as match. Because if that grant has restrictions, then you run into problems.
Okay. So maybe another one for you, Louis. Given that we have a change in federal administration and there's a certain amount of, shall we say, flux and uncertainty in federal funding, any insight on funding for the RISE PA program disbursements or any concerns? Are you plowing ahead, or is there a reason for pause?
So, as I'm sure, everybody in this group is aware, there were a flurry of executive orders issued last week, including the Unleashing America Energy Executive Order, which requires agencies to immediately pause disbursements of funds appropriated through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and Inflation Reduction Act. And RISE PA is an Inflation Reduction Act program. But then there was clarification that came out from the Office of Management and Budget that the disbursement pause only applies to funds supporting programs, projects, or activities that may be implicated by the policy established in Section 2 of that executive order, which does not directly mention the climate pollution reduction grant program. So although there is still uncertainty about our ability to receive disbursements, DEP is continuing to move forward with implementing RISE PA, and we do plan on still opening the program in early 2025.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that. And I think we're several minutes after the hour. I do want to pause to see if anyone from the audience has anything to add as far as questions or comments. And feel free to unmute yourselves. Well, I don't see anything, so thank you very, very much for this great informative forum today and for all your great work and being an example, I think, to some other states. We hope to promote additional cross-fertilization across the states of these sorts of programs. And I'm sure you'll be able to, you're willing to answer questions. We will share the presentations and the recordings with the working group, and we'll post them in case those who couldn't make it today have any interests and questions on this. And thank you very much. Also, a moment to, I neglected to thank my colleague Sam Kramer, who also is working on the working group, for his support and his great work supporting us. So thank you all. Have a great rest of the afternoon and great week as well. Take care.